Captain Rebecca Falcon Chin died 8 years ago in a secret military mission. Her family buried an empty coffin at Arlington National Cemetery. Her squadron retired her call sign forever. Military records list her as killed in action, body not recovered. But when American Airlines Flight 2847 faced a terrible emergency at 35,000 feet, a mysterious passenger appeared in the cockpit who knew things only a dead pilot should know. And when F-22 Raptor pilots heard the call sign Falcon come through their headsets during the emergency, they froze in their cockpits, unable to believe what they were hearing. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. It was March 14, 2025, and Captain Rebecca Chen had been officially dead for exactly 8 years. The brass memorial plaque at Langley Air Force Base still bore her name in raised letters that hundreds of pilots touched each day for good luck. Captain Rebecca Falcon Chin, 1989 to 2017, The Ultimate Sacrifice. Below her name, an engraved F-22 Raptor climbed toward an eternal sky. Every year on this date, her former squadron from the 1st Fighter Wing held a memorial ceremony. They stood in dress blues, saluted an empty chair draped with the American flag, and remembered the woman who vanished during Operation Silent Knife, a black ops mission so classified that even her family never learned what she'd been doing when she died. Rebecca's father, retired Air Force Colonel James Chin, kept her flight helmet in a glass case in his study. Her younger sister Michelle worked as an aerospace engineer at Lockheed Martin, inspired by the sister she'd lost. The aviation community spoke her name with reverence. Captain Rebecca Chin, call sign Falcon, the elite F-22 pilot who had pushed boundaries and paid the ultimate price. Her call sign was officially retired. No pilot would ever use Falcon again. It was sealed in honor of her sacrifice. But Rebecca Chin wasn't dead. At this exact moment, she sat in seat 23F aboard American Airlines Flight 2847, traveling from London to New York at 35,000 feet over the Atlantic Ocean. She wore civilian clothes, dark jeans, a gray hoodie, and boots designed for rapid movement. Her short black hair was hidden under a baseball cap. To the other 312 passengers, she looked like any exhausted traveler trying to sleep through a transatlantic flight. Nobody looked at her twice. Nobody suspected the woman in the window seat possessed skills that would soon save all their lives. 8 years earlier, Rebecca had been chosen for Operation Silent Knife because she represented the absolute pinnacle of military aviation. Top 0.5% of all fighter pilots. F-22 Raptor specialist with over 1,200 hours. Fluent in 4 languages. SEER training graduate with perfect scores. The mission was devastatingly simple. Infiltrate Iranian airspace using experimental stealth technology, photograph suspected nuclear weapons facilities, and return undetected. Everything went catastrophically wrong from the moment she crossed into hostile territory. Her F-22's experimental systems suffered cascading failures over the target zone. Iranian air defense systems, using technology that shouldn't have detected stealth aircraft, locked onto her position. Rebecca had 3 choices: eject and face capture and torture, attempt escape and risk international incident, or find an option that existed nowhere in any manual. She chose the impossible option. Using skills that defied physics and luck that defied probability, Rebecca crash-landed her dying F-22 in remote mountains along the Iran-Afghanistan border. But instead of destroying the aircraft and waiting for extraction, she made a decision that changed everything. She took classified equipment from the wreckage, deleted all identifying data, rigged the F-22 to detonate in a way that would mimic complete systems failure, and disappeared into the mountains. For 8 years, Rebecca Chin lived as a ghost. She moved through underground networks in Iran, Syria, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. She gathered intelligence that prevented terrorist attacks, stopped weapons shipments, and saved lives that would never know they'd been in danger. The woman who emerged from this crucible was no longer just an elite pilot. She had become something more dangerous, more capable, and infinitely lonelier than anyone could imagine. Captain Michael Torres had been flying commercial aircraft for American Airlines for 17 years. The 49-year-old pilot from Dallas had over 16,000 flight hours and a spotless safety record. But nothing in his extensive experience prepared him for what happened at 2:34 p.m. Eastern Time, approximately 900 miles from the nearest land over the mid-Atlantic. The first warning came as a cascade of alerts across the flight deck displays. Hydraulic pressure dropping. Electrical systems failing. Backup generators struggling. Captain Torres's hands moved across controls with practiced efficiency, running emergency checklists. Beside him, First Officer Jennifer Park, 34 years old with 5,000 flight hours, worked through secondary systems with growing alarm. Mike, we're losing multiple systems simultaneously, Jennifer said, her voice controlled but tight. This isn't a single failure. Something's affecting the entire aircraft. Captain Torres keyed his radio. Gander Center, American 2847, declaring emergency. Multiple system failures, requesting immediate assistance. Gander Center's response came quickly. American 2847, copied. Your position is approximately 920 miles from nearest suitable airport. Can you maintain altitude? Before Captain Torres could answer, the situation collapsed. The Boeing 777's autopilot disconnected with warning tones. Flight controls began responding erratically. Warning lights illuminated like deadly fireworks. And then Captain Torres felt crushing pain explode across his chest and radiate down his left arm. Jennifer. He gasped, vision tunneling. You have aircraft. First Officer Park watched in horror as her captain slumped forward, hands falling from controls. The Boeing 777, now without autopilot and with only one conscious pilot, began descending as Jennifer fought to maintain control. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Jennifer broadcast, voice cracking despite training. American 2847, captain incapacitated, possible heart attack. Multiple aircraft system failures. I'm alone in the cockpit. Requesting immediate emergency assistance. In the passenger cabin, 312 people continued their activities, unaware their lives hung by threads. A mother read stories to her daughter. Business travelers typed on laptops. An elderly couple watched the ocean through windows. None of them knew their aircraft was dying in midair, 35,000 feet above the cold Atlantic, with no land in sight and only one overwhelmed pilot between them and disaster. Rebecca had been dozing when the aircraft's movement changed. To ordinary passengers, the shift was imperceptible. But Rebecca's 8 years of survival had honed her instincts to supernatural levels. She knew immediately something was catastrophically wrong. She opened her eyes and listened. Engine sounds were irregular. The aircraft's movements felt wrong. Through the window, she saw endless gray water that would kill everyone if they went down. Then the announcement came, and Rebecca heard fear. First Officer Park desperately tried to hide. Ladies and gentlemen, this is First Officer Park. We're experiencing technical difficulties. Please remain seated with seatbelts fastened. Professional and calm, but Rebecca heard what others couldn't. The tremor in the voice, the careful downplaying, the absence of the captain. She looked around and saw flight attendants moving with controlled urgency, faces showing smiles that didn't reach worried eyes. Rebecca unbuckled and stood up. A flight attendant immediately approached. Ma'am, please return to your seat. I need to speak with your cockpit crew, Rebecca said quietly, voice carrying authority that made the attendant pause. I'm a pilot. Military trained. I can help. The attendant hesitated, procedures warring with desperate reality. Ma'am, I can't allow passengers into the cockpit. Your first officer is alone with a dying aircraft and probably a dying captain, Rebecca interrupted, keeping her voice low. I'm qualified to help. We're over the Atlantic with no land in sight. How long can she handle this alone? The flight attendant looked into Rebecca's eyes and saw something that decided her. Follow me. They moved quickly through the cabin toward the cockpit. The attendant used the intercom. Jennifer, I have a passenger who says she's a military pilot asking to help. Long pause. In the cockpit, Jennifer Park fought to control an aircraft becoming unflyable. Captain Torres was unconscious, possibly dying. She was alone, exhausted, terrified. Pride and regulations meant nothing if everyone died. Send her in, Jennifer's voice came through. The cockpit door opened. Rebecca stepped into controlled chaos. Captain Torres slumped in the left seat, breathing shallow. First Officer Park sat in the right seat, both hands on controls, eyes scanning instruments showing multiple critical failures. Sweat ran down her face. Who are you? Jennifer asked without looking away from instruments. Rebecca moved to the jump seat and began assessing with practiced precision. Rebecca Chin. Military pilot, qualified on multiple aircraft including heavy jets. What's your situation? The calm authority in Rebecca's voice made Jennifer glance back. This wasn't some amateur. This was someone who belonged in cockpits. Captain had what looks like a heart attack 5 minutes ago, Jennifer said rapidly. Same time we started experiencing cascading system failures. Hydraulics failing, electrical intermittent, autopilot offline. I can barely maintain altitude. We're over the Atlantic, roughly 900 miles from Newfoundland. We're losing altitude at 250 feet per minute and I can't stop it. Rebecca's mind raced through possibilities at inhuman speed. 8 years of making impossible decisions in deadly situations had enhanced capabilities she'd already possessed. She saw patterns in instrument readings suggesting not random failures but coordinated systems problems, possibly catastrophic electrical faults. "First Officer Park, I'm Rebecca," she said calmly. "I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Jennifer looked back and saw a depth of experience in Rebecca's eyes that suggested this woman had faced worse and survived. "Yes." "Good. First, stabilize the captain." Rebecca moved forward, checking Captain Torres's pulse and breathing. Her SEER training included extensive medical procedures. "He's alive but critical. We need a doctor." She keyed the passenger announcement. "If there's a doctor on board, please identify yourself to a flight attendant immediately." Within seconds, cabin crew reported Dr. David Walsh, a cardiologist from Boston, was coming forward. While they waited, Rebecca focused on aircraft systems, studying failure patterns with intensity born from years of analyzing hostile situations. "Jennifer, these failures aren't random. Catastrophic electrical fault cascaded through your systems. Some systems still operate. But we need to land within 30 minutes or we lose the rest." "There's nowhere to land," Jennifer said, voice cracking. "We're over ocean. Nearest airports are too far." "Then we make them less far," Rebecca said. "Do you have fuel?" "Yes. Control is the problem. With hydraulics failing, the aircraft is becoming uncontrollable." Rebecca's mind flashed to Afghanistan when she'd landed a damaged helicopter with no hydraulics in a sandstorm. She'd made that impossible landing. She could help make this one. "May I?" Rebecca gestured to the empty captain's seat. Jennifer hesitated only a moment before nodding. Rebecca moved to the left seat, carefully repositioning Captain Torres as Dr. Walsh entered and began emergency treatment. Rebecca's hands touched the Boeing 777's controls and something relaxed. This was what she was built for. Flying was written into her DNA. "Gander Center, American 2847, Rebecca said into the radio, voice carrying calm authority of someone who'd made life-death decisions under fire. "We have new pilot assisting. Military qualified, heavy aircraft experience. What are my landing options?" Canadian Air Traffic Control responded with relief at hearing someone confident. "American 2847, nearest suitable airport is Gander International in Newfoundland, but you're currently 920 miles away. At current speed and descent rate, you won't make Gander." "Understood," Rebecca replied. "What about military bases?" Pause as the controller consulted supervisors. "American 2847, Canadian Forces Base Goose Bay in Labrador, approximately 780 miles from position. They have adequate runway, but approach is challenging due to terrain." "Goose Bay acceptable," Rebecca said. "Please notify them we're coming. We'll need full emergency response." American 2847, coordinating now. "We're also scrambling military assistance." "What kind of assistance?" F-22 Raptors from U.S. Air Force Detachment to provide escort and communication relay. They'll reach your position in approximately 10 minutes. Rebecca's hands tightened on controls for just a moment. F-22 Raptors. Her aircraft. The jet she'd flown into hell 8 years ago. Beside her, Jennifer noticed the change. "You okay?" "Fine," Rebecca said, pushing down memories. "Let's keep this bird flying. Work through emergency checklists for hydraulic failure while I maintain control. We have about 28 minutes to reach Goose Bay before complete systems failure." For the next 10 minutes, Rebecca and Jennifer worked with efficiency that surprised them both. Rebecca flew the crippled Boeing 777 with delicate touch compensating for failing systems. Jennifer worked through emergency procedures with determination. Dr. Walsh stabilized Captain Torres as much as possible. "Massive heart attack," he reported. "Needs surgery immediately. If we land in 30 minutes, I think he'll survive." "Working on it," Rebecca replied, eyes never leaving instruments. Then the radio crackled. "American 2847, this is Raptor Flight, 2 F-22s approaching your position. We're here to escort you to Goose Bay." Rebecca recognized the call sign format instantly. Raptor Flight. F-22s in pairs, exactly as she'd done thousands of times. She could picture them, gray ghosts cutting through sky at speeds making commercial aircraft seem stationary. "Raptor Flight, this is American 2847, she responded. "Good to have you. We're dealing with multiple system failures and one critically injured pilot. Attempting Goose Bay but it's close. Major Jake "Havoc" Richardson led Raptor flight. At 34 he was among the most experienced F-22 pilots, with over 2,000 Raptor hours and combat experience in 3 theaters. He'd been mid-training when the emergency call came. Civilian airliner in distress over Atlantic, all assets respond. He'd taken his wingman, Captain Lisa "Viper" Santos, and punched through the sound barrier on intercept. Now approaching the struggling Boeing 777, he saw erratic movements indicating serious control problems. American 2847 Raptor flight has you visual, Havoc transmitted. Positioning to escort. Who am I speaking with? In the Boeing's cockpit, Rebecca hesitated. For 8 years she'd used false names and fake identities. She'd been 100 different people, none real. But now, 35,000 feet over the Atlantic with 312 lives depending on her skills, she was tired of hiding. Raptor flight, this is Captain Rebecca Chen, assisting with emergency operations. Long silence. In his F-22 cockpit, Havoc's hands froze on controls. The name echoed like a ghost. Rebecca Chen. Captain Rebecca Chen. Say again your last, Havoc said slowly, voice carefully controlled. Did you say Rebecca Chen? Affirmative. Raptor flight. Captain Rebecca Chen, currently assisting flight operations aboard American 2847. In the second F-22, Captain Lisa Santos keyed her intercom. Havoc, did she say Rebecca Chen? Like, Falcon Rebecca Chen? Stand by, Viper, Havoc replied, mind racing. Impossible. Captain Rebecca Falcon Chen died 8 years ago. He knew because he'd attended her memorial. Saluted her empty coffin at Arlington. Her memorial plaque hung in the squadron ready room where he saw it daily. American 2847, Havoc said carefully, requesting confirmation. State your military background and qualifications. Rebecca understood. The F-22 pilots were verifying she was legitimate, not dealing with hijacking or fraud. She needed information that would convince them. Raptor flight, former Air Force pilot, 1st Fighter Wing, qualified F-22 Raptors with approximately 1,200 flight hours and type. Last active duty 8 years ago. Another silence, longer. Then Havoc's voice, shock barely hidden. American 2847, what was your call sign? Rebecca took a deep breath. This would end her anonymity forever. Once spoken, everything would change. The ghost would become real. Raptor flight, my call sign was Falcon. In his cockpit, Major Jake Richardson felt his world tilt. His hands actually shook on controls. On his display, he saw his wingman had stopped transmitting entirely. Havoc, this is impossible, Viper's voice came through intercom, tight with disbelief. Falcon died 8 years ago. We were at the memorial. We saw the casket. I know, Havoc replied, voice strange to his ears. I was her wingman on her last mission. He keyed his radio to American 2847, struggling to keep voice professional. American 2847, Raptor flight acknowledges. Falcon. The call sign Falcon was officially retired 8 years ago following Captain Rebecca Chen's death during Operation Silent Knife. The pilot who used that call sign is listed as killed in action. I'm aware of my official status, Raptor flight, Rebecca replied calmly. It's complicated. Right now, I have an aircraft full of people who need to land safely. I could use assistance from fellow aviators rather than debate about whether I'm dead or alive. Havoc made a decision. Whatever impossibility he confronted could wait. Right now, there was a civilian airliner in trouble. Whether the person helping fly was a ghost, imposter, or actually Rebecca Chen returned from the dead, his job was helping them land safely. Copy that, Falcon, he said, using her call sign automatically. Raptor flight here to assist. What do you need? The use of her old call sign hit Rebecca harder than expected. 8 years of dozens of names but never herself. Hearing Falcon felt like coming home after an impossibly long journey. Raptor flight, coordinate with Goose Bay for emergency landing prep. This aircraft is barely controllable and worsening. We need longest runway, maximum crash rescue, and medical standing by. Already coordinating, Falcon, Havoc replied. Goose Bay rolling full emergency response. You'll have 11,000-foot runway, foam coverage if needed, every emergency vehicle they own. Distance to Goose Bay? Currently 680 miles. At your speed, approximately 42 minutes. Can you hold together? Rebecca glanced at instruments. Hydraulic pressure continuing to drop. Electrical systems flickering. She was flying the Boeing 777 through pure skill, feeling every input through her hands, making constant corrections to keep stable. We'll make it, she said with confidence she didn't entirely feel. We don't have a choice. For the next 40 minutes, Rebecca flew the crippled airliner toward Canada with two F-22 Raptors flanking her. Havoc and Viper coordinated communications, relayed meteorological information, provided reassuring presence helping Rebecca maintain focus. But on their separate frequency, the F-22 pilots had intense conversation. Havoc, we need to report this, Viper said. If that's really Falcon, this is... She's been dead 8 years. Questions. Serious questions. I know, Havoc replied. Already transmitting encrypted reports to command. But right now, whoever that woman is, she's flying that 777 like someone who's done this before. She's calm, professional. She's the only reason those 312 people are still alive. You think it's really her? Havoc watched the Boeing 777 ahead, watched subtle control inputs keeping the damaged aircraft flying. He'd flown hundreds of missions with Rebecca Chen before she disappeared. He knew her flying style like a familiar song. Yeah, he said finally. I think it's really her. Back aboard American 2847, Rebecca pushed herself and the aircraft to absolute limits. Every moment brought new challenges as systems failed. She'd lost most hydraulics, forcing her to control through emergency backups. Electrical problems caused instruments to flicker randomly. Through it all, she kept the Boeing 777 stable enough that 312 passengers wouldn't panic. Jennifer Park, working beside her, had moved beyond shock into odd efficiency. I've been flying 12 years, she said quietly. I've never seen anyone fly like this. Where did you learn to handle aircraft with almost no systems? Afghanistan, Rebecca replied without thinking. Syria, Iran, Pakistan. Places where aircraft don't have systems to fail because they're already broken. Jennifer stared. What were you doing in those places? Staying alive, Rebecca said simply. Her headset crackled with Havoc's voice. Falcon, 60 miles from Goose Bay. Weather clear, winds favorable. They're ready. Copy Raptor flight. Beginning descent. The descent was most dangerous. With limited control surfaces and failing hydraulics, Rebecca had to balance descent rate against ability to arrest when close to ground. Too fast and they'd slam into runway and break apart. Too slow and they'd stall and fall. She began descent with delicacy that made Jennifer hold her breath. Every input precise, calculated, constantly adjusted for changing characteristics as systems failed. Rebecca flew by feel as much as instruments, hands and body reading movements through controls. American 2847 Goose Bay Tower, a new voice came. Cleared to land any runway, all traffic cleared, emergency equipment standing by. Good luck. Copy Goose Bay, Rebecca replied. We're committed. The last 10 miles took forever. Rebecca could see the airport now, concrete strip carved into Labrador wilderness. The two F-22s positioned on either side of the Boeing 777, close enough she could see Havoc's helmeted head when she glanced out. You've got this, Falcon, Havoc transmitted. Bring them home. The landing was a masterpiece. Rebecca aligned the Boeing 777 with runway while managing descent rate, airspeed, and tendency to roll from failed hydraulics. She called for flaps and gear, heard Jennifer confirm deployment, watched runway rise knowing she'd have exactly one attempt. No go-around, no second chance. Too damaged, too close to complete failure. Main wheels touched with barely a shudder. Rebecca immediately deployed thrust reversers and began braking, but with failed hydraulics, brakes were only partially effective. The Boeing 777 rolled faster than normal, eating precious distance. Brakes weak, Rebecca said calmly. Jennifer, emergency brakes. They activated every stopping system. Slowly, agonizingly, the Boeing 777 decelerated. They used 9,500 of the runway's 11,000 feet before finally stopping. The moment stationary, emergency vehicles surrounded them, fire trucks spraying foam, ambulances rushing to doors, rescue personnel ready. In the cockpit, Rebecca sat back and allowed herself one moment of relief before inevitable chaos. They'd made it. All 312 passengers plus crew safe. American 2847 on the ground, she transmitted to Raptor flight. All souls safe. Copy that, Falcon, Havoc's voice came back, emotion barely contained. Damn good flying. Welcome home. The two F-22s made one final pass over the runway, salute to the pilot who'd brought her aircraft home against impossible odds, then turned and accelerated away, leaving contrails across Canadian sky. Captain Torres was rushed to hospital where surgeons worked 6 hours to save his life. Passengers were evacuated, processed, provided emergency accommodations. Jennifer Park gave preliminary reports, repeatedly saying, "We'd all be dead if not for the passenger who helped fly." But that passenger had disappeared. By the time military security and aviation investigators reached the aircraft, Rebecca Chen was gone. She'd slipped away during evacuation chaos, moving with practiced invisibility. She'd taken nothing, left nothing, vanished like the ghost she'd been. Except she'd left proof she existed. The cockpit voice recorder captured every word. Flight data recorder showed her control inputs. And most importantly, two F-22 pilots had heard her use a call sign retired 8 years ago. Within hours, military intelligence reviewed every second of communication. Within a day, voice analysis confirmed match with Captain Rebecca Chen from 8 years earlier. Within 2 days, they'd pulled her classified file and discovered something that made senior officials lock information with beyond top-secret classifications. Operation Silent Knife hadn't ended with Rebecca's death. It continued 8 years as one of history's most successful deep-cover intelligence operations. Rebecca hadn't died in Iran, she disappeared into Iran, then moved through hostile territories gathering intelligence, stopping threats, saving lives that would never know they'd been in danger. Her death had been perfect cover for an agent who needed to vanish completely. But now she'd exposed herself to save civilians, and the intelligence community faced an impossible question. What do you do with a ghost who's proven she's alive? 3 days after the landing, Rebecca appeared at her parents' home in Virginia. Her father, retired Colonel James Chin, opened the door. He was 71 now, hair completely gray, shoulders slightly stooped. He looked at Rebecca for a long moment, face showing no expression. Then tears began streaming. "Hello, Dad," Rebecca said quietly. He pulled her into his arms and held her with strength that belied his age, held her as if he could keep her from disappearing through sheer will. "We thought you were dead," he whispered. 8 years. "I'm sorry," Rebecca said, own tears coming after 8 years of forcing them back. "I wanted to tell you. I couldn't. The mission." "I know about the mission," her father interrupted. "I figured it out 2 years ago when intelligence reports came through channels with your fingerprints. I knew you were alive. I couldn't tell your mother or sister because I couldn't prove it, and I couldn't risk your cover." They stood in the doorway, father and daughter, reunited after 8 years. Then her mother appeared, and her sister, and there were more tears, more embraces, more words that couldn't express 8 years of grief transformed into impossible joy. That evening, military officials arrived. Polite, respectful, absolutely insistent she needed to come with them. "Captain Chin," General Patricia Hawkins said, "you've been operating without support for 8 years. Time to come in from the cold. We need debriefing, need to understand what you learned, figure out what comes next." Rebecca looked at her family, then the general. "What about them? They just got me back. I'm not disappearing again." "You won't," General Hawkins assured. "Those days are over. But there are procedures, questions, and frankly, many people want to understand how you survived 8 years in hostile territory." The debriefing took 3 weeks at a secure Virginia facility. Rebecca sat across from intelligence analysts, military strategists, psychological experts, telling them about 8 years that officially never happened. She described infiltrating weapons networks in Syria, gathering intelligence on terrorist cells in Afghanistan, photographing nuclear facilities in Iran, moving through hostile territories with nothing but skills keeping her alive. The intelligence she provided was staggering. First-hand knowledge of weapons systems the U.S. only suspected existed. Photographs of facilities satellite surveillance couldn't penetrate. Personal relationships with underground networks invaluable for future operations. Most importantly, she'd stopped 3 major terrorist attacks that would have killed thousands, operations she disrupted without anyone knowing she was involved. "What you've accomplished is extraordinary," Colonel David Foster from Military Intelligence said. "The intelligence community calls Operation Silent Knife one of history's most successful deep-cover operations. But we need to understand psychological toll. 8 years alone, constantly maintaining false identities, unable to contact family. How did you survive?" Rebecca thought carefully. "I survived because I had to. Because people depended on intelligence I could gather, even if they didn't know I existed. Because every day alive was another day I might prevent an attack or save lives. And because I promised myself someday I'd come home." The decision to expose yourself to save American 2847? You knew that would end deep cover operations. "I knew," Rebecca confirmed. "But there were 312 people who needed help. Some missions are more important than maintaining cover. I became a pilot to serve others, not hide in shadows forever. While Rebecca underwent debriefing, the story spread through aviation circles and mainstream media. Initial reports focused on the mysterious passenger who helped land the aircraft, but journalists dug deeper. They discovered the mysterious passenger used the name Rebecca Chen, matching a military pilot who died 8 years earlier. They found connections to classified operations. They uncovered inconsistencies suggesting something extraordinary. Within 2 weeks, the story exploded internationally. Dead pilot returns to save airliner. Ghost pilot's 8-year secret mission. News organizations worldwide picked up the story of Captain Rebecca Falcon Chen, the elite F-22 pilot officially dead 8 years but actually operating as deep cover intelligence agent, only revealing herself when a commercial airliner needed her skills to survive. The 312 passengers were interviewed extensively. They described the calm, confident woman who appeared during their darkest moment. They talked about her precise control of a dying aircraft, reassuring announcements, determination to get everyone safely down. "I knew we were in serious trouble," said passenger Michael Harrison, a businessman from New York. But then this voice came over speakers, calm, authoritative, like she'd handled worse 100 times. She told us what was happening, what she'd do, and somehow I believed her. When we landed, when I realized we'd survived something that should have killed us, I wanted to thank her. But she was gone. First Officer Jennifer Park became the public face, giving interviews. "Captain Chen Falcon saved everyone aboard," Jennifer told reporters. "Our captain was dying. Our aircraft was falling apart. I was alone and terrified. Then she appeared and suddenly I wasn't alone. She flew that 777 like she'd been born in a cockpit. I've been flying 12 years. I've never seen anything like it." Major Jake Richardson was contacted by news organizations about escorting American 2847 and hearing the supposedly dead pilot's call sign. After authorization from Military Public Affairs, he gave an interview that went viral. "When I heard the call sign Falcon over the radio, I literally froze," Havoc told CNN. "That call sign belonged to someone who died 8 years ago. Someone I flew with. Someone I considered a friend. Hearing it again was like hearing a ghost. But then I listened to her flying that crippled airliner and I recognized her skills. Nobody flies like Falcon. She was the best I ever knew, and apparently 8 years of whatever she was doing made her even better." 3 weeks after the landing, the Department of Defense held a press conference. General Patricia Hawkins stood at a podium flanked by American flags, facing cameras from around the world. "I'm here to discuss Captain Rebecca Chen and Operation Silent Knife," General Hawkins began. 8 years ago, Captain Chen was engaged in a classified operation that encountered catastrophic difficulties. Rather than risk capture or compromise American capabilities, Captain Chen continued her mission using deep cover protocols requiring her to be officially declared deceased. The room erupted with questions, but General Hawkins continued. "For 8 years, Captain Chen operated in the world's most dangerous regions, gathering intelligence that prevented terrorist attacks, stopped weapons proliferation, and saved countless lives. The intelligence she provided led to operations that dismantled terrorist networks, prevented development of weapons of mass destruction, and stopped attacks that would have killed thousands." "Why wasn't her family told?" one reporter shouted. "Because any communication would have compromised her cover and put both Captain Chen and her family at risk," General Hawkins replied. "Deep cover operations require complete separation from previous identity. It's not done lightly and it comes at tremendous personal cost. But Captain Chen's intelligence was vital to national security." Another reporter asked, "Why reveal herself now?" General Hawkins smiled slightly. "Because 312 people on American 2847 needed a pilot, and Captain Chen is incapable of standing by when lives are at stake. She exposed her identity and ended 8 years of deep cover operations to save civilians. That reflects the character that made her an elite pilot and exceptional operative." 2 months after the landing, Rebecca was summoned to the Pentagon for a ceremony she tried to decline. Her family was there, along with senior military officials, members of Congress, and media. General Hawkins presented her with the Intelligence Star for voluntary risk-gathering intelligence resulting in substantial contributions to national security. She also received the Distinguished Flying Cross for heroism during aerial flight, and multiple other commendations. But the moment that meant most came after the ceremony. Her old squadron from the 1st Fighter Wing had traveled from Langley. Major Havoc Richardson approached her, followed by a dozen F-22 pilots, many who'd never met her but knew her by reputation. "Falcon," Havoc said formally, then broke protocol and hugged her. "Welcome home. The other pilots surrounded her, and suddenly Rebecca was among her people, aviators who understood flight, who knew what it meant to trust your life to skills and equipment, who recognized sacrifice. These were her family in ways that went beyond blood. "Your memorial plaque is still in the ready room," one young pilot said. "Are we supposed to take it down now?" Rebecca smiled genuinely for the first time in weeks. "Keep it up. It's a reminder of what we sacrifice for the mission. Besides, part of me did die 8 years ago. The woman who came back is different." Captain Lisa Santos stepped forward. "Different how?" Rebecca thought about it. "Harder. Sharper. More aware of threats. Less patient with bullshit. But also more grateful for small things, a good meal, safe place to sleep, people who care whether I live or die. 8 years changes you." "Your flying didn't change," Havoc said. "If anything, you got better. The way you handled that 777, somehow you're even more precise than you were." "You learn things when failure means death," Rebecca replied. "I've flown damaged helicopters through sandstorms, landed aircraft with no hydraulics in hostile territory, talked people through emergencies when I was on ground and they were airborne. 8 years of survival training makes you adapt." One younger pilot asked what everyone wanted to know. "Are you coming back? Flying F-22s again?" Rebecca looked at the pilots surrounding her, felt the pull of the aircraft she'd loved, and struggled with a decision defining her future. "I don't know," she admitted. "Part of me wants nothing more than to get back in a Raptor and fly like I used to. But I'm not the same person who flew 8 years ago. I've seen things, done things that changed me. I'm not sure I fit that world anymore." 3 months after the landing, Rebecca made her decision. She would return to aviation, but not as a traditional military pilot. She would create a new program combining her intelligence experience with aviation expertise, training for pilots who might operate in hostile territories, teaching them not just flying but survival, evasion, and mental resilience needed for extreme circumstances. The program was based at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, operated under classified designation, drawing students from multiple service branches and allied nations. Rebecca taught them everything she'd learned during 8 years in the field: how to fly damaged aircraft with minimal systems, survive in hostile territory, maintain cover identities, and most importantly, make impossible decisions when lives depended on choices. But she also taught something else: knowing when to break cover when a mission becomes less important than immediate human needs. "I spent 8 years hiding," she told one class. "I became invisible because the mission required it. But when 312 people needed a pilot, I didn't hesitate to reveal myself. Some things are more important than missions, operations, or even your own survival. Never forget you're human first and an operative second." 1 year after the emergency landing, American Airlines held a ceremony at JFK Airport honoring everyone involved in saving Flight 2847. Captain Michael Torres, fully recovered and flying again, stood beside First Officer Jennifer Park, who'd been promoted to captain. Dr. David Walsh was there, along with passengers wanting to thank the people who'd saved their lives. And Rebecca, uncomfortable with attention but willing to honor the request, attended as well. "A year ago, I collapsed in my cockpit," Captain Torres said during the ceremony. "I don't remember anything after that moment. But I woke up in a hospital in Canada, alive because of extraordinary people who responded. First Officer Park, who kept the aircraft flying during initial crisis. Dr. Walsh, who kept my heart beating when it wanted to stop. And Captain Chin, who appeared like a guardian angel to save everyone aboard." He turned to Rebecca. "I can never adequately thank you. You gave up 8 years serving your country in ways most will never know. Then you gave up the anonymity keeping you safe to save a plane full of strangers. That's heroism beyond anything I can comprehend." Many passengers spoke. Jennifer Morrison, a teacher from Boston, brought her students who'd created a display about Captain Chin and the importance of courage. "My students learned that heroes aren't just people in comic books," she said. "They're real people who make difficult choices to help others, even when it costs them everything." Captain Jennifer Park spoke last. "Before Flight 2847, I thought I knew what being a pilot meant. Captain Chin taught me something different. She showed me being a pilot isn't just about flying aircraft, it's about serving others, making impossible decisions, being ready to act when people need you most. She's not just a hero. She's the pilot I hope to become." But the most meaningful moment came after the official ceremony. A group of F-22 pilots from the 1st Fighter Wing had flown to New York specifically for this event. Led by Major Havoc Richardson, they presented Rebecca with a flight helmet. It was painted in gray and blue camouflage pattern of the F-22 Raptor, and on both sides, painted in careful letters, was her call sign, Falcon. We've been holding this for you, Havoc said. Your old helmet was destroyed 8 years ago when your aircraft went down. This is your new one. The call sign Falcon was retired when we thought you were dead. We're officially reinstating it. You're the only person who will ever use this call sign, and whenever you're ready to fly with us again, your place in the squadron is waiting. Rebecca took the helmet with hands that trembled slightly. She'd thought she'd never fly an F-22 again, never feel the Raptor's power responding to her controls, never experience the pure freedom of pushing an aircraft to its limits. The helmet represented not just return to flying, but return to family, to belonging, to the community she'd missed during 8 years of isolation. Thank you, she said quietly, then looked at the assembled pilots. And yes, I'm ready to fly again. 2 weeks later, Rebecca Chen climbed into an F-22 Raptor's cockpit for the first time in 8 years. The aircraft smelled the same hydraulic fluid, electronics, and that indefinable scent all military jets share. She ran through pre-flight checks with hands that remembered every switch and control, muscle memory taking over despite years away. Major Havoc Richardson was in the second F-22, ready to fly as her wingman just as he had 8 years ago. Falcon, you ready? His voice came through her helmet. Born ready, Havoc, Rebecca replied, and felt something inside her settle into place. She was home. The 2 F-22s taxied to the runway, received clearance, and launched into Virginia sky. Rebecca pushed the throttles forward and felt the Raptor's twin engines respond with a roar that pressed her back into the seat. The aircraft lifted off and climbed toward clouds with acceleration that made her smile behind her oxygen mask. For 8 years she'd been grounded, hiding, surviving. Now she was flying again, free in the sky where she belonged. The F-22 responded to her touch like an extension of her will, turning, climbing, accelerating through maneuvers that pushed boundaries of physics and human endurance. Falcon, you've still got it, Havoc transmitted, watching her aircraft dance through the sky. 8 years away didn't slow you down. Just getting warmed up, Rebecca replied, rolling her F-22 inverted and pulling through a maneuver that left contrails spiraling in the air behind her. They flew for an hour, running through combat maneuvers, practicing intercepts, simply enjoying the pure joy of flight. When they finally returned to base and landed, Rebecca climbed out and stood for a moment looking at the F-22 that had carried her safely through the sky. She'd survived 8 years in hostile territory. She'd saved 312 lives by exposing her identity. She'd returned to her family and military community. And now she was flying again, doing what she was born to do. 2 years have passed since American Airlines Flight 2847 made its emergency landing in Canada. Captain Rebecca Falcon Chen now leads one of the most elite aviation training programs in the world, teaching pilots to operate in the most challenging environments imaginable. She flies regularly with her squadron, maintaining proficiency in the F-22 Raptor while instructing the next generation of aviators. Her family has healed from 8 years of grief and loss, though the experience changed them forever. Her father frames every letter she writes, treasuring communication he thought he'd never have again. Her mother calls every day just to hear her voice. Her sister followed her into military service, inspired by Rebecca's dedication and sacrifice. The 312 passengers from Flight 2847 have returned to normal lives, but many stay in touch. They've formed an informal association called the Falcon's Flight, meeting annually to celebrate their survival and honor the woman who saved them. Some became advocates for aviation safety. Others shared their stories in books and documentaries. All understand they received a gift that day, the gift of continued life, provided by someone who'd spent 8 years giving everything to protect others. Captain Michael Torres flies commercially again, though he carries deep respect for life's fragility. Captain Jennifer Park has become one of America's most respected pilots, known for her calm under pressure and willingness to mentor young aviators. She keeps a photograph in her cockpit, Rebecca standing beside the F-22 with her helmet under her arm, as a reminder of what it means to be truly exceptional at their craft. The F-22 pilots who escorted American 2847 that day became legends themselves, the aviators who witnessed a ghost's return. Major Jake Richardson, now Lieutenant Colonel Richardson, commands the squadron where Rebecca once flew. He still stops at her memorial plaque every day, though now it carries an additional inscription, declared dead 2017, returned 2025. Welcome home, Falcon. The story of Flight 2847 has entered aviation legend, taught in training programs as an example of skill, courage, and the importance of being ready to act when others need help. Rebecca's name appears in textbooks alongside famous aviators throughout history, pioneers who pushed boundaries and proved that extraordinary capability emerges when ordinary people face extraordinary circumstances. But for Rebecca herself, the most important outcome isn't the recognition, the awards, or even the survival of 312 people. It's the fact that she's home. She flies with her squadron, teaches students who look at her with awe, and has dinner with her family every Sunday. She still wakes up sometimes reaching for weapons that aren't there. She still positions herself with clear views of exits. The 8 years left marks that will never completely fade. But she also laughs with friends, enjoys the simple pleasure of flying without having to hide who she is, and has learned that healing is possible even after the most traumatic experiences. She's not the same person who disappeared 8 years ago. She's stronger, harder, and more capable. But she's also more grateful, more aware of what matters, and more committed to using her gifts to serve others. On March 14, 2027, the anniversary of her official death, 10 years earlier, Rebecca stands with her squadron at the memorial wall at Langley Air Force Base. The brass plaque has been modified to reflect her return, but the core message remains: sacrifice, service, and the price of freedom. The young pilots around her, many her students, listen as she talks about that day 8 years ago when her F-22 went down behind enemy lines and she made the decision that would define the next years of her life. "I didn't choose to disappear," she tells them. "The mission required it and I answered that call. For 8 years, I lived as someone else, gathering intelligence that saved lives and prevented attacks. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and I wouldn't wish that experience on anyone. But when American 2847 encountered an emergency, I didn't hesitate to expose myself. Because some things are more important than missions or personal safety." She pauses, looking at the young faces watching intently. "You're training to be elite aviators. You're learning to fly the most advanced aircraft in the world. But never forget that being a pilot isn't about the aircraft or the technology. It's about service. It's about being ready to act when others need you. It's about making impossible decisions and living with the consequences. 8 years ago I was declared dead. 2 years ago I returned to save 312 lives. Since then I've taught hundreds of students and flown countless missions. But the lesson I want you to take away is this: you are never truly lost as long as you remember why you serve. The mission will end. The aircraft will change. But your commitment to protecting others, that's what defines you as an aviator." The ceremony concludes with the traditional missing man formation, 4 F-22 Raptors flying overhead, one pulling up and away to symbolize fallen comrades. But this year, for the first time since Rebecca's return, the formation is complete. All 4 aircraft fly together because the pilot they'd mourned for 8 years is standing on the ground below, watching them fly. As the sound of the jets fades into the distance, Rebecca feels a hand on her shoulder. It's Havoc, her eternal wingman, her friend who never stopped believing she might somehow still be alive. "You came home, Falcon," he says simply. "I never really left," Rebecca replies. "I was always here in my heart. I was just taking the long way back." And in the sky above them, 4 F-22 Raptors turn and bank, their gray forms cutting through the clouds. They're not ghosts, they're real, solid, present. Just like Rebecca Chin, who died 8 years ago but never stopped living, who disappeared but never stopped serving, and who proved that sometimes the dead don't stay dead when people need heroes. The call sign Falcon flies again. And everyone who hears it knows they're hearing a legend, not because of the pilot who used it, but because of the person who proved that service, sacrifice, and courage can overcome even death itself. Captain Rebecca Falcon Chin stands at Langley Air Force Base, surrounded by family, friends, and fellow aviators, no longer a ghost but a living reminder that heroes emerge when they're needed most. She flew into darkness 8 years ago. She returned to light when 312 people needed her. And she continues to serve, to teach, and to inspire everyone who hears her story. The dead don't fly planes. But sometimes, when the need is great enough and the stakes are high enough, they come back to life to remind us what it means to serve something larger than ourselves. Welcome home, Falcon. Welcome home.